it's time to get up and go. Derek Wolf getting his stretch on. It's a beautiful morning here at UCL Training Center as the Broncos are back to work ahead of 2 practices with the Bears. And after today, fans have just one more chance to check out practice for free, so make sure to come on out tomorrow. And if not, hey, we got you covered for both practices with Chicago. Hello, and thank you for joining us for Broncos Camp Live, powered by Ford. I'm Phil Milani alongside Matt Boyer, and pleased to be joined by Ryan Edwards of Orange and Blue 760. Thanks for coming on, Ryan.
Always look forward to it, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Back to practice for the first time really after the game. They had some corrections and a little bit of a practice on Monday, but the big storyline, Chad Kelly being bumped up to the number 2 quarterback.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that everybody was talking about yesterday, Chad Kelly getting elevated. He had a great game. We talked about it on the radio yesterday. Mm-hmm. The reads that he made were very, very impressive. The command of the huddle was very, very impressive. And I thought that it was very telling also yesterday that even though Chad got bumped up, he still stayed after practice for 30 to 45 minutes to work with River Craycraft, work with Jake Butt, get those extra reps in. So he's not taking anything for granted.
No, and he really hasn't since he's had the opportunity to practice with the team and be here. And you ask a lot of the coaches and talk to them, and he's the first guy in the facility every single day, and as you see, he stays after practice. Now, that doesn't always indicate to you that a guy's going to have success in the league, but the fact is, you're willing to put in that kind of time. The players notice that, and the guys want to work with a guy like that, and that's not to say anything necessarily against Paxton Lynch, but Chad Kelly as Mr. Irrelevant, that's a good way to make a first impression on this team.
Chad Kelly had 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that interception against the Vikings on Saturday night. Pretty strong outing. I mean, the fans were
Kelly.
Pretty cool. I think the good thing we saw, it looked like he knew what he was doing out there. He was moving the ball.
Yeah, I think so. I think that we talked about the chemistry last week that he's developed with those third-line guys. Now can he develop the same type of chemistry with those second-line guys and those second-line offensive linemen? I think he can. I think he's shown the ability to do that, but he's got to prove it this week in practice. It's going to be a very, very big week for Chad.
That's exactly right. I think he's earned the opportunity to be pushed a little more, and that's what I saw from that game, and that's what we saw in the Sunday scrimmage when he kind of had the performance that he did there too, is you want to see him, okay, you did well against the threes, third team defense for the Vikings, did well against the threes here in the Sunday scrimmage. All right, let's see what you do against the twos. And again, the Broncos twos, I mean, there's a lot of starters on that, guys that would start on a lot of NFL teams. So what we're watching for now is to see if he can continue some of the things he did in that game. And there are things that I think he can. I mean, his ball placement, his ability to move protections, those are all things that are indicative of a quarterback that's seeing the field well. Now it comes a point of, hey, there's going to be faster closing speeds with the pass rushers, with the cornerbacks, and you're going to have to be able to adapt. And I think he has a good chance of doing that.
Chad Kelly coming up to the number 2 spot. What does that mean for Paxton Lynch?
Well, he's going to face some adversity. He is facing some adversity right now. As a quarterback, as a player, as a competitive person, you never want to see a coach come to you and be like, hey, we're bumping you down. Somebody else is going to take your job. Now we're going to get to see how does he respond to the adversity, and hopefully he just pushes Chad. I think that the best thing that can happen in this situation is Paxton Lynch rising to the occasion and continuing to push Chad Kelly, because that means the Broncos are going to end up with the best possible backup quarterback.
No, that's exactly right. And Vance Joseph is being careful enough to say this thing isn't over. It's a fluid situation with the depth chart, and that's what you want to say, because you don't want to completely drain a guy's psyche. And in this case with Paxton Lynch, his confidence is something that he needs to be able to sort of still hold on to. And Chad Kelly, meanwhile, I think is going to take the reins. I think he'll continue to push like he said he was going to from even this offseason. But yeah, for Paxton Lynch right now, I mean, you're getting down to maybe even a little bit of desperation. And I think oftentimes with players, when they're in that mode, you can sometimes see the best performances from them. And I guess hopefully he takes that opportunity and that ownership.
Yeah, this thing's certainly far from being over. There's still 3 more preseason games to go, and then starting with 2 practices against the Bears here. Does it look like Paxton Lynch has that fight, that hunger inside him?
I would hope so. We don't know yet. Like you mentioned, I think we're going to learn a lot in the next 3 games. But, is he going to come out after practice, get that extra work in? Are we going to see him getting that extra weight work in? What is he going to do extra to push Chad? What is he going to do extra to take his job back? We don't know what that's going to be yet, but it is going to be interesting to see if he's willing to put in the work.
Well, and he kind of has to, not just for him, but even for the locker room, for the other players on this team. They want to see it too. And that's just why the quarterback position is so different. And there's something, and I know sometimes we make too much about this, but there is a personality to it. Mm-hmm. And Chad Kelly is exhibiting that in the way that he's taken ownership. Even in postgame or yesterday talking to the media, that interception, he's still kind of dwelling on it. Of course, you got to move on, but he's dwelling on it knowing that he had a chance to even be better, and he knows. And the thing is, with Paxton Lynch, I'm not saying he didn't point out his mistakes or the things that he could be better at, but he's just got to continue to show that he's going to make progress. And right now, it feels a lot like it has the last couple of years for him, and he's got to change that narrative.
Yeah, Paxton was visibly upset meeting the media in the locker room after the game. As for Chad Kelly, we know that nothing's going to really change for him. He's got that hunger, that fight in him. We've seen him during OTAs really stay late. We saw him in the film room, always working late. And now that he's the number 2 quarterback, he says his work ethic will not change.
You just got to work hard. That's really what it is. You know, even the best ones are still working extremely hard. They don't know everything. And obviously, me being in my second year, I don't know anything. So, like I said, got to work hard, got to watch more film than I ever have before. And you know, when your time's called, you better be ready to step up and go.
Chad's played well. He's played with poise. He's played with confidence. You know, he moved the ball for us on Saturday night. So, and it's been that way since the spring. You know, I mean, he had a great spring. He's had a great camp. So, it's his turn to be the 2.
So you hear Vance Joseph saying it's a performance business. We know that you gotta play well in the games and show what you took from practice, show it in the game, and we certainly saw Chad Kelly do that. You don't blame Vance for bumping up Chad Kelly the number 2 spot.
No, Vance said it. You know, it's more about what Chad did than what Paxton didn't do. The depth chart is a fluid thing. It can change. It can fluctuate. So let's see what happens now when Chad's given the chance.
Our thanks to Ryan Edwards for joining us first off the top. Now we bring on the Ring of Famer, Steve Atwater.
Fellows, thank you for having me on.
Steve, what do you think of Vance Joseph's decision to bump up Chad Kelly?
Well, I thought it was a good decision. It was the right time for it. You know, and unfortunately for Paxton, you know, he just hasn't shown the improvements that he needs to show. He hasn't proven to the coaches and to the players that he's worthy of that number 2 position. And hopefully this will inspire him and get him to work a little bit harder and stay up later to do a better job.
And Vance has the difficult job of trying to motivate Paxton and get his spirits back up and get him ready to go for the next 3 preseason games. Give him another chance to show what he has. And that's enough about the backup position. Let's talk about the main guy, Case Keenum. Of course, the starter. We only saw him for 2 series. Not really enough to really make a first judgment on him.
No, he was only 1 for 4 for 5 yards. I mean, how much can you really learn about a guy and his gelling with the offensive line especially? I think it was good for him to get a taste, get his feet wet, but get him out. He doesn't need to be out there for a long time. You already know what you have with Case. Let those younger guys play. But now, Steve, with this second game, now we get to see a little bit more, maybe a quarter and a half, depending on what Coach Joseph decides. Now we get to see what he has.
Yeah, now we get a chance to really see what Case Keenum is made of, see if he's actually the Case that we've been seeing in practice, which I think we all believe he is. It was such a small sample size, getting 2 series in. Normally in a game, a team may have 10 to 12 different series. So, you know, having such a small sample size doesn't really do him justice. So I'm putting that in the background, not even worrying about, you know, the performance of the first team offense this last week.
What do you mean? It's time to freak out. They went 3 and out twice. Panic, right?
No. Definitely not time to panic. I saw some tweets online, you know, about, hey, Case sucks, and it's like, no, he does not. I don't know where they got that nonsense from. Case Keenum is going to be a great quarterback for us. He's shown that here in practice and is going to carry over to the game when he plays more.
Now the quarterback of the defense, Von Miller, he didn't even play in this game. What do you expect to see from him this week against the Bears?
Well, it will be interesting to finally let the reins off of Vaughn, because Coach Joseph has mentioned Vaughn can sometimes wreck a practice. If he goes 100%, we can't get the offense to get their work done just because of how dominant he is with his presence along that defensive line. I think that being able to kind of set him loose on the Bears, and, you know, he's finally able to go full tilt, really get some good work in before that second and then third preseason game, and then you shut him down for the fourth, I think this is going to be a very important week for his workload.
Well, he's not going to be going all the way out.
Well, come on.
Because he can't bring the quarterback to the ground
true.
here in practice.
That's
so, I mean, it won't be full tilt, but it'll probably be 90%. We'll get a chance to see him do some fun stuff here in practice, both he and Bradley Chubb. You know, I'm ready to see him let the dogs out.
There you go.
You're starting to scare Mitchell Trubisky a little bit. Hey, maybe we don't want to come to Denver, huh?
Right, exactly.
You think that Vaughn will get a little bit of action in this game?
I think so. Well, we expected him to play, and up until right before the game, you know, Vaughn was told like he was going to play, and then they shut him down. They take the pads out of the locker.
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he played a couple of series. And
I think so.
He doesn't play the full first quarter, just because I think everyone knows that Von Miller is still a magnificent player, and the most important thing is the preseason. He prepares in a way that he's always ready for the preseason. For the regular season.
He's always comparing himself to a Ferrari, so maybe just say make sure the engine
maintenance.
still starts
This is maintenance.
up.
Yeah.
Make sure it's good to go. The Broncos did make a couple of moves on the defensive side of the ball yesterday. Shamarko Thomas coming in as Jamal Carter, torn hamstring, heading to IR. The Broncos also released the linebacker Stanley Mapanga to make room for A.J. Johnson, the linebacker out of Tennessee. He was when he was on the football field, a tremendous player, 3-time All-SEC selection. He's the second all-time leading tackler in Tennessee history, but he has not played football for 3 years. That's because in 2015 he was indicted with aggravated rape charges, so a very serious claim there. But the Broncos do make that move, trying to add a little bit of depth on the linebacker position. Matt, what do you think about the signing there?
It's interesting because you don't really know what he has. He hasn't played football in 3, almost 4 years. So from the football side, I think it's very interesting. From the personnel side, John Elway released a statement yesterday saying that they've done their due diligence. They've talked with A.J. about his background, his history. He also met with CEO and President Joe Ellis. So I think that because of that due diligence, I think some of those concerns have been put to rest with the Broncos personnel department. But it will be interesting to see what he has because, Steve, as you know, if you're not playing football for 3 years, that's a lot of time off.
It's a ton of time off, and he could be a totally different player now. But from watching his film, some of his film at University of Tennessee, this guy gets to the ball. His nickname was the Beast in the SEC, and 424 tackles. That's a huge amount of tackles for a college player. 6'2", 243 pounds, has great size. The question will be, is he in still great shape? Now, I heard that he's actually a personal trainer, so he trains other people and he works out with them. So I'm anticipating him being in great shape when he comes in. The question will be how much fight does he have? Can he still get to the ball the way that he used to when he was in college?
We saw Todd Davis return to practice, but at the very least he might be able to add a little bit of depth at that linebacker position. We saw the Broncos give up a little bit of yards on the ground, maybe a bigger type linebacker come up there and stop the run too.
Yeah, and we had a chance to hear from AJ yesterday when he talked about, he hasn't been on the football field for 3 years, but just to get the opportunity was enough for him.
Yeah, you saved my life, but God's good, man. I had a lot of faith, and I knew God was going to take care of it, and I kept pushing forward, and I'm glad to be here today for real glad. Nah, I'm not a bearded guy, man. I wake up happy every day. I'm blessed. I'm glad to be out here. I haven't had this many cameras in my face in a long time, but no, I have no bitterness about me.
It'll be very interesting to see, Phil, where A.J. Johnson fits. You've already got a room, as you mentioned, Todd Davis. You've got Brandon Marshall, Josie Jewell. It's going to come down to, in my mind, where he fits along that special teams, that Zaire Anderson role. I think him and Zaire are going to really be competing for one of those linebacker positions.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does. Maybe get a little bit of action against the Bears here in this practice. Our thanks to Ring of Famer Steve Atwater. Now we bring in Andrew Mason, hopping on the show here. It's like 1st and 10 at 10. But at 9:30, right, Matt? You've been making that joke.
I know. We're getting a taste of what's to come at 10 a.m. Right, Mace?
Yeah, a little bit of sauciness today. We'll see.
We talked a lot about Chad Kelly in the first block. Who else had a good game, Mesa? Josie Jewell really showed that he might be a player in this league.
Yeah, he went into the half leading in tackles, and just when you're watching him, you see a guy who's able to get to the right place at the right time because he's got good instincts. He knows how a play is developing, and he knows how to fill the gap that's being created. Now, the thing with him is you're wondering how good he can be in coverage. He's probably more suited to zone coverage than man coverage, but at the same time, the Broncos looking to incorporate some more zone looks into what they do. Jewell might be a perfect fit there as well, so you can see him potentially developing into more than just a two-down linebacker. Potentially, he could be an every-down linebacker down the line in this defense.
Yeah, he could be playing with that first-team unit pretty soon here. Matt, another guy who had a great game, we saw Will Parks get a sack.
Oh, we saw the touchdown dance too. He said just a little taste. It wasn't a full regular season sack dance,
Yeah.
but it was good to see Will finally get into the backfield. I thought that blitz from defensive coordinator Joe Woods really showcased some creativity that we could see the Broncos implement down the line. Also, I thought Will was particularly good in coverage. Overall, a good night for him. He played almost the entire game, said he wasn't upset about it, but that he really appreciated the work.
Well, he kind of had to. He had injuries to Sua Cravens and Jamal Carter. Of course, Cravens missed the game, Carter out for the season, so you need an extra safety at times. And to his credit, he volunteered to go in, even though he started. That blitz, I love that blitz. You had both Parks and Brandon Marshall poised over the A-gaps before the snap. Marshall dropped. Parks attacked. Minnesota really didn't know what was coming, really was kind of confused by that. And that sort of look can discombobulate an opposing offense. I think we'll see more of it.
And when you're in a competition during training camp, making big plays out on the field really pays dividends. Another guy who did that, Isaiah McKenzie, couldn't feel any happier for Isaiah.
What a return. We talked about guys, when we talked about Chad Kelly, putting in the work. And Isaiah McKenzie is one of those guys who's put in the work. He stayed after practice, fielding the punts, fielding the kick returns, just trying to make his game better and trying to make this team. And when you see a guy put in that type of extra work, you can't help but root for him, Mace. And when he finally got to get into the stands, celebrate with the fans after he scored that touchdown, one of the best moments of game one.
And really, you look at that return and what he does, it's everything that he wouldn't have done as a rookie. Secures the football, and then is patient enough to let everyone get in position, let his blocks develop, knows that they're going to be there, and then when he has the opening, takes off around the end. I've also got to mention Philip Lindsay. And the reason I'll mention him, obviously, he had the touchdown in the fourth quarter from Chad Kelly, but also with Lindsay and McKenzie, they're both fighting for spots in the return units. Right now, Lindsay is the first-team kickoff returner. McKenzie is the first-team punt returner. I think maybe before last week you were thinking maybe you got one on the 53, one on the practice squad. Now, it would not surprise me to see both on the 53 when all is said and done.
Yeah, those two making early impressions on the coaches so far. Another guy who returned to practice we didn't get to see in that game, Jeff Hireman. Good to finally see him back out of practice. I think he missed about 9 practices.
He looked great. I thought that the movement was the thing that I was going to be most concerned with in watching yesterday's practice. I thought he moved great off the line of scrimmage, hit his blocks well, caught a couple of really nice passes from Case Keenum. I think that Vance Joseph was completely justified in putting Jeff at that first line, and he showcased what he can do out there yesterday.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit concerned with the knee. He mentioned that the knee soreness was in the same knee on which he had surgery in 2015 when he tore the ACL in rookie camp that year. So that's something that's going to have to be continued to monitored. And I think going forward, maybe he could be on a program where they rest him some days. Maybe he's resting a day during the week leading into a Sunday so he can be available if the soreness pops up again.
Yeah, this is something that's really plagued him throughout his NFL career. We saw him have that bright spot, the touchdown against the Colts last year on Thursday Night Football. Hopefully looking forward to more plays like that this season. Here's Jeff Hireman saying his knee's feeling all good.
Honestly, I felt really good out there today. It was kind of my first time back, first time taking some live reps and stuff. I've been running and conditioning and catching some balls and stuff, but today was the first day back and felt really good. Just being back out there with the guys and training camp and just the whole vibe of everything. It's awesome just to be back.
Hireman feeling all good out there. We see him back at practice again here today, so hopefully he can move past this knee injury. As we wind down here on Broncos Camp Live, Mace, what can we expect on the radio for today?
Well, just covering the practice, we'll talk a little bit more about the Chad Kelly, Paxton Lynch depth chart change and what that's going to mean, and whether the Broncos might be looking for a veteran number 2 at some point.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing. Chad Kelly maybe competing against the rest of the league, some veteran QBs trying to earn a spot as a Broncos backup quarterback. We have one more open practice for fans to be able to come out here, so if you're watching at home, make sure to try and come out to practice the first practice against the Bears tomorrow. We will be back covering both days against the Bears, so not to worry. That Thursday practice closed to fans, but we'll have it covered right here on Broncos Camp Live. All right, that's going to do it for us. Our thanks to Ryan Edwards and Steve Atwater for coming on earlier. Andrew Mason, Matt Boyer. I am Phil Milani. This has been Broncos Camp Live, powered by Ford.